crazy vision that I had from the Lord. Now, a little bit of backstory, 25 years, grew up in the church, had a radical encounter with the Lord where he confronted me for living lukewarm, serving in the church, living for the world. And so when God confronted me and I gave my life to Jesus in 2016, I began reading my Bible and just eating it up as much as I could. And I started to learn about words of knowledge and prophecy and healing and just everything, and believing that God would speak. And so over the next few years, I really cultivated this relationship with the Lord where I would begin to hear him speak and I would move in a word of knowledge, or sometimes I'd get it wrong, but I would always be pressing in, believing for more, believing that God would speak. And I went from a period of trying to hear God speak to him interrupting me during times of prayer or conversations or whatever, where I didn't even ask him to give me a word, but he just did. And so now, fast forward to 2017, it's in the summertime. I had taken some time off of work as a police officer, and I was down in Florida, where I live now, but I was just vacationing at the time. I'd been born again for about 18 months, and I'm in a Starbucks. I'm in line about to get a drink so that I can just sit down and read my Bible and spend some time with the Lord. And I see this gentleman standing in front of me, and I have this vision, this open vision. I've never encountered anything like this. I haven't seen anything like it since. But as I'm looking at this guy, it's like there's a floating video in my field of view. I can still see the Starbucks, right? I can still see the people in line. And I couldn't even believe this was happening, but I see this video like pop up over this guy's head. And I see him walking up the stairs of this, cheap-looking motel, and he goes into a room, closes the door behind him, and I felt in my spirit like I was watching a filthy movie or something like that. I just felt gross. And I heard the Lord say he's going to commit adultery, and he's married. And I looked, and he had a wedding ring on his hand. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then I started to think, oh my gosh, now I have to do something with this, like everyone thinks it's cool to get a crazy word from the Lord until it's time to release that crazy word. And it's not very comfortable to do. But I knew that this could save a marriage. And I also knew, look, if I'm just, not hearing God or whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm going to go in faith. And either way, I'm believing that God spoke to me, and I'm going to be obedient. And we'll find out if it's the Lord along the way. But I'm going to test this word. And so I asked the guy if he can go talk out in the parking lot. I said, look, God showed me something, I think, and I need to talk to you in private. Can we go in the parking lot? And he's like, sure. He's kind of off put. And so we go out in the parking lot, and I said, hey man, listen, I was looking at you and I had this vision. I saw you going into a motel room, and I believe the Lord told me that you were going to cheat on your wife. And I said, don't do it. I said, the Lord wants to save your marriage. And as I began to say this, I was getting other words of knowledge. And maybe you're like, well, what does that look like? I was just getting thoughts. As I'm talking to this guy, I'm getting thoughts. And the thoughts were, he's got an addiction to pornography. And so I said, I believe the Lord wants to confront an addiction to pornography. And then I had another thought, it's causing issues with his son. And I said, I believe you've got issues. Do you have a son? And he's like, yes, I have a son. And I said, I feel like there's some issues there just because of this secret sin that's been happening. And the man just turned red, and he looked absolutely caught. And I just said, look, don't do it. The Lord loves marriage. He loves your marriage. He wants to save your marriage. Don't do this. And after that encounter, I was very uncomfortable, but I felt like the Lord was, I felt his heart for marriage. God loves marriage. He loves the sanctity of marriage, the purity, the holiness of it, because he's in it. The Bible teaches that a triple braided cord is not easily broken, and that we form a covenant with God. So marriage is not some light thing that is just because of a piece of paper that a government recognizes. No, this is a covenant recognized in heaven, and God will stop at nothing to make sure that someone doesn't make a horrible mistake. And that's the mercy of God as well. And I was so honored that he would speak through me. And so I was like, man, this is such a cool testimony. I'm going to share this. And at the time, you know, a lot of people weren't posting crazy Christian stuff on Instagram. TikTok wasn't really happening. And so I posted it on Facebook, and it actually went viral. Like, every time I logged back into Facebook, every hour, it was like 10,000 more views, 5,000 more views, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments. And I ended up meeting my wife because she commented on the Facebook video. And I saw her profile, and, you know, to be honest, at that time I was single, but I was so tired of, and maybe this will give some comfort to you who are walking in a season of singleness, I was so tired of the fake stuff. Like, I had lived as a confessing Christian for 25 years, but I wasn't following Jesus. And so I didn't want that in a woman. I wanted a wife. I wanted a woman of God. I didn't want someone who had shown their body all off on social media and then had a Bible verse in the caption. Like, I didn't want anything to do with that. And so I saw my wife, I saw her profile, and I was like, wow, that's a beautiful woman. And her page was all about Jesus. Like, there was nothing that was a red flag. And so I was like, Lord, can I message her? And he said, why not? He said, your heart's pure. Why not message her? And so I sent her a message, and I just said, hey, and we were talking for a couple of days, just messaging back and forth. And I ended up finding out that she was going to school up at Lee University. And I had about 2 days left on my vacation in Florida before I flew back home to Washington, all the way across the country. And I remember one night, I woke up in the middle of the night, and I had a thought. The Lord spoke to me, and he said, how far away is Lee University? I woke up from a dead sleep at like 2 in the morning, and I'm on Apple Maps looking up Lee, and it's about an 8-hour drive. And I was like, okay, it's 8-hour drive. And I said, Lord, could I take her on a date? And he said, why not? Your heart's pure. You're looking for a wife. You're not looking for something else. And I said, okay, I'm going to ask her. And so the next day I asked her, I said, hey, this might sound totally crazy, but can I come up and just take you to dinner before I fly back home to Washington? And she said, I said, I want you to pray, or I can't remember if I said, I want you to pray, or she said, I want to pray. But we both wanted her to pray about it. And so she said, I'm going to go pray. And she came back later and she said, you know what? I was praying and I feel like the Lord just said, why not? And it made me laugh because I hadn't shared with her that that had been his response to me up to this point. And so I said, cool, I'm going to come take you to dinner. And sure enough, I drove up. We went to dinner one night. I flew to Washington back home the next day. We did long distance for 9 months, and we got married in 2018. We've been married for 6 years. We've got 2 beautiful boys. Life with the Lord is incredible, but it's really funny when people ask me, how did you meet your wife? And I get asked that all the time by unbelievers. And what do you say to that? Like, what does an unbeliever say when I told them that the way I met my wife is because I had a vision in the Starbucks of a guy who's going to cheat on his wife? It's crazy, but this is the life with God.